Good evening. I'd like to call the June 10th, 2026 regular board meeting to order. We have 7 board members present, although you don't see one up here because Lillian is on the phone joining us. And item 2A is adoption of the agenda. I would entertain a motion.
I would move for approval of the agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
That brings us to item 3A, public comments. Casey, do we have any public comments?
Nathan Writing, and I do not believe he's here at the moment.
If he comes later, is he allowed to speak, or is this his only chance?
We could. If we move on from this, then this part of the agenda is past us unless we made a motion to amend the agenda and put public comment later in the event he were to come, although he did email us, so he may have just sent us his thoughts.
Those were his comments from the last meeting,
Okay.
I think.
Would,
Can I make a motion
sure.
to move the public comments to be... Well, just to give a little bit of time, so maybe after human resources or after teaching and learning items? Teaching and learning?
After teaching and learning.
Okay. I'd like to move that we move public comments to after teaching and learning, 6D.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote. As a reminder, public comments will be allowed for a duration of 3 minutes per speaker to be timed by the board clerk. Speakers must sign up in person for public comment by 1 p.m. the day of the board meeting.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Brings us to item 4, the consent agenda. Okay. The items listed on the consent agenda are those for which the board has received information in advance and have been thoroughly reviewed. Approval of the items may be made in a single motion, second majority vote with no separate discussion of any item listed. Should a member of the board desire to discuss any item at the request, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. What are the wishes of the board?
I move to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. That's going to bring us to item 6A, preschool program assurances.
Cheryl's going to come up and take this one, along with Joy.
We are asking that for approval to purchase the 2 screener assessments that are needed to meet the state standards requirements through KSDE. One is the speed dial, and the other is called My IGDIS. One is more the pre-literacy.
The speed dial is a developmental assessment that we can give to all students to determine if they meet that cutoff for a student that is functioning below their grade level peers. And then the MyIGDs is what we can utilize for entry and exit of our program to show growth during our program. So students would be given the MyIGDs at the start of when they start attending Jones, and then not again until they're leaving Jones. And then we would have really good longitudinal data to track them while they're in our program. So it's more the content and the academic standards, whereas the speed dial is more those pre-academic skills and the things that get us ready for the academics in the classroom.
And both of these are required by the state.
So if a student leaves, like maybe they were supposed to be here for 2 years, but they leave their first year or they leave halfway through, do you still give them the leaving assessment?
If we know about it ahead of time.
Sure.
Some of our students move and then their parents call and say, we're in Texas. But other ones, if we know that they're leaving, we do finish up what assessments that we can. So yes, we would give that upon knowing that a student was going to leave,
Nice.
even if it was at the end of the
Yeah, that's
three-year-old
nice
program.
to, even
instead
if
of
you would
4.
just want to see 3 months progress,
Yeah.
it's nice. Okay, thanks.
So since they're required, I assume the state probably doesn't do any special reimbursement on those? No, okay.
The
Just-
reimbursement that the state would say is that these help us to mark off the at-risk, the preschool at-risk grant application. So these are things that we have to do to meet our side of the assurances to get the preschool at-risk funding. So the funding that they would probably say would be the at-risk funding we get for the pupils at Jones based on using these measures. Does that make sense?
And is this a one-time fee, annual fee?
These would be one time. The MyEgDs does have a student component that we can use to buy and track them over years. So it might be after we look at it that it's something that piece of it. And I don't have the quote broken out, but there is, on one of the quotes, there is something that says like MyEgD student profile. That would be the only piece that would be a yearly fee if we decided that we needed that part.
Thank you.
I will make a motion to approve the purchase of My Ignis kits in the amount of $9,438 and Speed Dial in the amount of $3,780 as submitted.
Second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, that's going to bring us to 6B, primary resource for elementary social studies.
Our social studies teachers at the elementary level have been kind of piecemealing their resources. There aren't any really strong social studies standards, or there are the standards, but there aren't the resources to address them. So the teachers are spending a lot of time coming up with the text to use and things like that. There is the Studies Weekly, which is a resource that the company takes the Kansas standards and creates their, for lack of a better word, newspaper for the kids to utilize to address the state standards. The teachers would get all of their newspapers at the beginning of the year, then they can pace them out throughout the year. The company will go in and adjust the content based on state standards. So if Kansas were to make a change in a standard, the next year we wouldn't have the new standards in our document, but the following year that we would. So it responds to the state standards so that we're not locking into a resource and it being that until we have to adopt another resource. This would be something that we would have, and we're doing a 3-year purchase, 3-year contract. So if in next year we were to get notified that they were changing the standards, our 3rd year we would have new newspapers to refer to.
Is this something that we've used before, or is this a new tool?
This is new. Logan Avenue came to me, Mr. Ayers came to me with the resource and presented it to me. He said, we've been looking and looking and looking, and we found this. It's something that he had used when he was in the classroom, and he found it very beneficial. He said, can I take it to my teachers and try it? They tried it and loved it. The kids loved it. They said, I'm reading a newspaper just like my grandpa does. So it's a good thing. It gets them off their tablets. So
Makes me think of the weekly readers that I grew up on in
Weekly
elementary
reader.
school. Yeah, for sure.
Scholastic News.
Yeah, those
Yep.
were the best. And the 52,926 is total for 3 years, not
Yes.
52 each year.
Nope, that is for the 3 years. And if we could have done a 5-year contract, which would have knocked it down about, I want to say 10 cents a student per year. But I thought this was a good middle of the ground start.
I think Lillian has a question. Are you ready?
Hi, Cheryl. Thank you for putting this together. I have 2 questions, I think. My first one is about the professional development. I saw that that's included in the bid.
Yes.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on that, about like what each of those professional development sessions would include? And then I was also wondering if you could talk a little bit about how much time is spent on social studies in the elementary classroom, and maybe give us a little bit of a picture of like how the teachers would utilize this on a daily or weekly basis.
Okay, the professional development is it allows the teachers access into a portfolio, an electronic portfolio, where they can look at resources. There's some games that the kids can play if the teacher chooses to do that. Kids can get on it at home, stay connected with the content, but it is not absolutely necessary to be able to do the activities and to get the content. The teachers utilize this. They do 1 day science, 1 day social studies. They alternate back and forth. So it's about two to 3 days a week for about 30 minutes a day. They look at scheduling their social studies and science into the classroom.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the presentation. I move to approve the 3-year purchase of Studies Weekly in the amount of $52,926.98 as submitted.
Second it.
It's been moved in second. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Item 6C, Spring 2026 State Assessment Preliminary Results.
Good evening. Thank you for letting us share this tonight. Ms. Leeds and I will be talking a little bit about the preliminary results of the state assessment. So in this presentation, we're going to share, go to slide 2. We're going to share the preliminary results. We're going to talk about ELA, math, and science. We're going to look at both grade level and cohort. You asked for some cohort data, so we're going to take a little bit look at that this time. And with that note, we've only got 2 years. We're going to look at 2 years of data on that because we just have 2 years of the new assessment. And then we're going to talk a little about some celebrations and some focus areas. And I want to caution you, this data you're seeing is from the KITE portal. So it's not official, it's not approved by the state board yet. That'll happen sometime in early August. So what I'm showing you percentage-wise may or may not change down the road. So here's ELA, and I just gave a little summary for you. There's a table over on the left-hand side. There's kind of a summary. It kind of shows you what we're doing by grade level. And when I say by grade level, that's for third grade, that's third graders in 2025, and that's third graders in 2026. So we're looking purely at a grade level curriculum type of a work there. And we see an improvement. That kind of helps us understand the work that we're doing with curriculum work, things like that, making our overall curriculum and teaching better in that grade level. So you can see we did pretty good. We improved in 4 grades. Third grade went from 41 to 43. Fifth grade went from 42 to 45. Seventh grade went from 32 to 38. And 10th grade went from 38 to 46. So we made some nice growth in those areas. And again, just to remind you, proficiency now, moving forward on the new assessment, is students at levels 3 and 4. So in the past, I know there was some confusion when we looked at level 2 also. We're purely calling proficient levels 3 and 4 moving forward. So again, some key takeaways: grade 10 increased 8 points, grade 7 increased by 6 points, and we have some positive growth in both elementary and secondary. So the next slide looks at that same data, but we're looking at by cohort. And I named the cohort by a letter. So you can see cohort A would be third graders in 2025, and they're fourth graders in 2026, and you can see what they did. So in 2025, they have 41%, and in 2026, they went to 42%. They improved one point or 1%, which is good. You can kind of go down through that, and you can kind of see the changes and improvement. Some places I want to point out there with cohort C, that's that 5th to 6th grade transition. If you recall other data points you've looked at dealing with that kind of transition, we always see a little bit of a fall off there as they transition from elementary to secondary. And that's something I think we're going to have to look at as we move forward, and how we can support those 6th grade students as they come to the high school. Because if you look at cohort D, the 6th to 7th, we improved quite a bit there. So they picked it back up and they caught them back up. So there's some good takeaways there, but I just want to point out we had strong growth at grade 6, and we had some problems with our transition of kids from 5th to 6th grade. It'd be interesting to see what the transition looks like next year as we add another year of data on this to see if we see a consistent trend there. Because if we do, then I think there's more work to be done there. So the next slide deals with math, same kind of setup. This time we're math, we're looking at grade levels first. You can see third grade, they were at 30% in 25, they're at 30% in 26. But you'll see that we made some nice growth. Fourth, fifth made a 1 point growth, or 1% growth. Again, those are curriculum type situations there. That's the course is hopefully getting better, and hopefully the work that we're doing this summer with curriculum alignment and the performance level descriptors and the mini tests, hopefully we're going to see a bigger change in 2027. That's why we're doing that work. You can see that 7th and 8th grade dropped a little bit, and then 10th grade had a big jump from 24 to 37. So some key takeaways there: 6 and 10 each increased by 13 points, and we had a little bit broader gains over ELA. Then the next slide is that same kind of cohort analysis. The cohorts are named the same way. So we can look there, we can see we had the cohort A, which is 3 to 4, increased 3. Cohort B went from 32 to 41, increased 9. There's that 5th to 6th again, where we saw a drop. So it's consistent with what we're seeing with ELA as well. And then cohort D and E, saw a little bit of a growth there. We won't see a 10th grade until next year, because next year's 10th graders will be 8th graders in 25. So we'll have another cohort group to add next year in there. Then we have science. So science, we don't have as much data because we're only assessed at grades 5, 8, and 11. And recall from last year with grade 11, we didn't get scores back because the range of scores produced wasn't broad enough to get set the levels. So right now they're in standard setting to set those standards. So we'll receive grade 11 scores at some point this year. But you can see what 5 and 8 did for 5th grade, went from 42 to 44, improved. Grade 8 held pretty steady. They went down 2. That's still pretty steady. But again, we're looking at the levels 3 and 4 there. And we don't have a lot of cohort data to look at there because it takes so many years to get the cohorts when you're only testing 3 grades. And I think Ms. Lees will take care of the rest.
Okay, the key successes that we've seen as a district is our 10th grade has had strong growth in ELA and in math. Our math performance improved across multiple grade levels. Several of our cohorts demonstrated year-to-year growth. There's evidence that the instruction and intervention efforts that we've been working on this year are starting to pay off. Areas to continue to focus on is that transition from 5th grade to 6th grade. Is it that, just getting into the rhythm of the middle school? Is it a different testing environment? We're really digging into what is causing that dip in the scores. We are seeing consistency across middle school performance, and we're going to continue to support the Tier 2 and Tier 3 learners. What our data tells us is that our curriculum instruction adjustments are beginning to show impact. District-wide grade level cohort achievement gains are encouraging. Cohort analysis helps identify long-term student growth patterns. Transition years require strong systems of support. It's, again, really looking at that 5th to 6th grade. And our spring 26 focus was in the late May, early June, working on that curriculum development work that we did in our curriculum camps, where they were aligning our resources, looking at the performance level descriptors, really digging into the test, identifying what is it, what does the standard look like, what does my instruction need to be, what do the questions need to look like to be a level 3, to perform at that level. The late May, early June alignment of the kite, they were looking at their state assessment, starting to identify and create those mini tests so that we can have some ongoing discussions on student performance as the year goes on and not waiting until spring. And then July, the MTSS leadership work will begin to strengthen our Tier 1 core instruction. And our closing message is we're encouraged by the progress reflected in these preliminary results and appreciate the continued work of our students, staff, and school communities. These gains build positive momentum as we continue our district improvement efforts. What questions do you have for Dr. Cardula and I?
I would really like to thank you all for this report. It's very promising to see those scores going up. I did have one question about the fifth graders. What is the biggest difference in the testing environment, or is there any difference other than just moving from fifth grade to sixth grade?
It's a couple of things. As you know, at the elementary, they have one teacher. They go to having 6 or 8. The way the middle school administers the test, they do everybody at the same time, so you may not be tested by your math teacher or your ELA teacher or your science teacher. And there's a train of thought that you really need to be testing in the class where you receive your instruction. As a math teacher, I would have things, anchor charts up, and kids could look and see it. I would have to take it down during assessments, but during assessments, I would see them looking at where those anchor charts were. They could visualize them even though they weren't there. When you don't assess in that environment, you don't have those points of reference to think. Also, when I'm the math teacher and I'm being held accountable, I make sure that the testing environment is, you hope that everybody is testing the way they should, but there's a little more ownership when it is your subject and you take it seriously.
Okay, so just a quick follow-up. Is there anything that requires the students all be tested at the same time of day?
No, that's just how they have done it. And so I'm having discussions with them about what that can look like differently moving forward.
Yeah, my questions were really focused on that grade level too, because it's really just interesting to see how well those cohort students were doing even in 5th grade. And then especially like that spring 2025 drop all the way down to 17. It's just so significant. It's nice to see the really impressive grade level jump at 6th grade, but to see that those kids only went up 1 point the following year. So that's just really, really interesting to me.
Yeah, and looking at, when you're looking at what Casey has showing right now, that is saying Jamie's class scored at a 17. And Barb's class, which is the next year, scored at a 30. So they might have brought in some additional scores. So that's why we also dig it into that cohort and see what happens. You have to really triangulate that data.
Yeah, one set of data is really more examining how impactful are your instructional strategies, your curriculum, is everything aligned at a particular grade level from year to year to year? And then when you look at your cohort data, you're more focusing on, are those actual students making growth?
I appreciate your comments, and there's a lot of good information there, and obviously you've identified some that are areas of concern. That 5th to 6th grade is a pretty common transition in many districts. I was wondering, have you, or when you're at statewide meetings or something, do other districts see the same challenges at that point?
Similar, yeah.
So it's not,
Similar.
not just us.
It's not, we're not lone rangers or lone wolves or, but it's really looking at what is it that we can do differently.
Sure.
And I
yeah.
think that's the big thing that we've got to dig into is, when I looked at the math scores, the 6th grade math scores, this year's group, they made the gains from last year. They're very strong math students. Those teachers were really digging into the standards, but making that change in the testing environment really does impact. So, and that's something that I know that the middle school math teachers are really starting to look at is maybe we need to bring them back in and test within our classrooms. So that is a discussion that we are definitely having.
Okay, thanks.
I want to point out too, Cheryl's doing a great job, and Dr. Cargila, the whole department, in getting our building leaders and our teachers, our instructional coaches, everyone to look at the data and dig into the data more deeply, because we can look at this is kind of surface level data here, but you really have to dig into, okay, what math standards in the 6th grade were the students actually not, capturing? They may be doing really well in certain standards and not in others, and so digging into that data is going to give them, it's going to improve their instruction and help them to focus in the areas that actually will help, rather than just continuing to do well where we do well and do poorly where we do poorly.
It's like so with what Dr. McGee was talking about with digging into those standards, the results we get back from the state assessments in terms of standards is very limited. We don't get a lot of information back. These are more summative. That's why we need to dig into the kite mini tests, because we can do those by standards. And that's why we're wanting to make sure when they teach a standard, they're working with a mini test to know how well the kids did. So we can get to that standard earlier in the year, so we can do benchmarking to know, did the student get to where they needed to be on that standard at the time of instruction. So that's really where we're heading with this. It's just taking us some time to get there. We did a lot of great work. We got a lot more work to do. But I think the work that was done this summer with, and I got some stuff I can show you, but the work we did this summer, I think is going to make a difference. It's just going to take some time to get to that, like Dr. McGee said, the standards piece. To get to that spot, we need to produce some data, some good assessments to get to that spot.
I know that in past years, we've had you all disaggregate the data so we could actually really be a part of digging deeper into the results and which students are excelling and which ones might need a little bit more support. And I'm wondering if we'll have access to that again this year.
Yeah, we will. Once it goes to the KSDE and gets into the Data Central and into the portal, yeah, we can disaggregate the data. It's just this data needs to run through their business rules before it's approved, and then we can disaggregate it for you. Yes.
And they'll share out individual student data. This is all they've given us.
I believe that October work session is designed to really dig into student achievement.
We'll have a disaggregated data by then. And we also will be able to do it by cohort as well.
And our building administration and instructional coaches will be part of that evening, so.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
That's going to bring us to item 60, the Flint Hills Virtual Program Handbook Addendum 2627, first reading.
So this is the next step. We approved that MOU last meeting, so been working on this addendum. So I'm going to go through, I have about 10 points that I'm going to kind of point out to you in this, and I'll try to get Casey on the right pages. So we're going to start with page 2. And we're going to talk about it in terms of expands educational access. The program offers a flexible learning option for students whose circumstances make traditional attendance difficult, helping them meet the expectations of the school. And also on page 2, I want to remind you that we're working with students grades 6 through 12, and we're working with students less than 19. We're not going to have any adult students in here. It's all going to be students that are 19 or less. And they will follow EMS and EHS handbooks. These are just some specific things that relate to virtual that's in this addendum. The admissions process on page 2, and it kind of gets to the bottom there. We're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like, but really it's a recommendation by the principal. The parents have to approve it, and then our virtual director has to be involved with that as well to make sure that everything is in place. So there's 3 points of approval there to get a student into this program. And then, again, it's just an alternate placement for students who have been suspended or have trouble getting to school for various reasons. If you go to page 4 and 5, page 4 and 5 gets to the bottom of that, gets to some account information, and that stuff right there needs to be updated based on the new enrollment handbook, which that's not available yet. So the stuff in here is based on last year's. I tried to adjust it a little bit, but I don't know all the things that KSD is going to do. But in order for a student to be counted, they got to participate in 2 count windows before September 20th and after September 20th, before October the 3rd or 4th. So I have to do that. Another big thing on page 5 that we have to watch out for is to verify residency. We have to make sure that they're residents of Kansas, and they have to have one of those bullets to show that they are a resident of Kansas. So we will need to collect that for students who join the virtual program. Page 5, the curriculum. The curriculum will be delivered through ESDAC's program. They use a variety of programs like Edgenuity. They use some of that. They also use Edmentum. So there's various programs they'll use. One of the things that we're working on through our process document is we need to be able to, particularly with the high school, we need to be able to understand which courses they're going to take it through the virtual program and how they align to high school courses. So we're doing a crosswalk there, so we'll know that this high school course crosswalks to this virtual course, so Mr. Fisher can do credits for graduation. If you go to page 6, students in this program, if they're in good standing, will be able to participate in sports and extracurricular activities through CASHA. There's a process there, and this kind of lays that out a little bit about what they'll do there. On page 6, it talks about accountability measures. Students will be expected to complete 3.5 credits a semester, and they're expected to work 4 to 5 hours at a time in this program. So it's not something they just do every once in a while. They need to commit to this, so it's a big commitment. And the last thing I want to point out is that if a student meets all the graduation requirements, they will be a graduate from Boyd High School, because they are a high school graduate. If they complete our graduation requirements and all the virtual requirements as well, they'll receive one of our diplomas. So that's really the 10 things I wanted to share as a result of this. We still have a lot of work to do with process documents, how do students enroll, how do they exit the program, how do their grades get transferred from ESDAC back to Emporia High School or the Emporia Middle School, how does ESDAC communicate with us, which counselors are they going to talk to, which assistant principal they're going to talk to. One thing I do want to point out about this program is ESDAC is going to do a lot of the communication with the families. If a student is falling behind in this program, that's one of the things we talked about with them, is they're going to be contacting that student, that family, to stay on top of their progress. They're going to help us do that. And they're also going to communicate back with us about the students and their progress. So I feel pretty good about that, how that's going to look. Haven't done any of it yet, so I can't tell you what it looks like, but that's what they're telling us, and we're hoping that that's going to be the case. So it's really all I had to share with all that document, but do you have any questions about this?
Will that communication back to the school happen through their alphabetical counselor or through one particular counselor in the building?
That's something that Mr. Fisher and Mr. Burns and I are working on. Most likely, there won't be a lot of kids, so most likely there's going to be one counselor and one principal. If it expands down the road, we may need to think about that differently. But there's going to be one point of contact for a counselor and a principal at the middle school. That's kind of the way it's looking right now. I can't tell you who it's going to be, but it's probably most likely going to be one contact in each area at each school.
I have a question. And if I'm not understanding it right, or if you've explained this before, explain it to me again. When the students are participating in this program, I kind of envision it like, working from home, right? You do it wherever you are. But as someone who has worked from home, I know that sometimes having an environment that is conducive to learning, a home office, a place that feels like it puts you in the zone, right? Not just sort of in your bed, right? Is there going to be any opportunity for these learners to perhaps have a classroom or a physical space where they can go to do their virtual learning, just so that they're in maybe an environment that's more conducive? Because some homes are different than others. They may have the right space, they may not.
So for the most part, this is going to be done at their home. But the nice thing about being part of our virtual program is they could have access to some of our teachers They could come in and do some work. Like, I didn't talk about state assessments up there, but state assessments can be done remotely, or they can be done on site. So they could come in to like Mary Herbert and they could take a state assessments here. But for the most part, we wouldn't provide them a space to do this work. It's primarily going to be done off-site at their residence where they work.
And that'll be a part of the consideration on, who are we recommending for this program? Who's going to be successful? If it's not a student that can kind of self-motivate and stay on track, they're probably not designed for this particular program.
And then ultimately, they could go to the Flint Hills Learning Center still, because this isn't meant to replace that.
That's correct. Although I will say we are having a lot of conversations about doing more of that, not necessarily virtually from home, but it's similar kind of work. But like Jeremy said, it would be a place where, that's where I go to do my work.
So I had a question for state reimbursement purposes and student count, would we be reimbursed at a prorated amount for this?
So the difference, there's a little bit of different funding. I think it's 5,600 virtual funding.
Yeah, I think the virtual we had reported or I saw
Yeah.
it somewhere is like 5,600 versus the 5,783, and then our agreement with SDAC, because they're really providing the entire program, right? We're coordinating with them to make sure our students are successful. We're putting students in the program. So SDAC, I think, is collecting 65%.
Yeah, it's 30. The split's going to be 35, 65. So if we have a student who's in the program and they're full-time on count day, we would receive 35% of the funding, and SDAC would receive 65%. Now, if a student is enrolled in this program, let's say November the 1st, and we've already collected funding for that student on September 20th because they were an on-site student, we would then reimburse SDAC at a prorated rate for the time they're with SDAC, which I believe is right now I think it's $912 is about what it's going to cost per quarter for us to do that. So it'd be a transfer from our funds to SDAC's funds, but because we've already been paid for that student.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Dr. McGehee.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, they're the ones providing all the teachers. They're paying for all the folks delivering the services, and so it reduces our costs greatly. So it may initially say, oh, we're only getting 35%. But we also don't have all those costs to implement the program that they're affording.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for letting me present tonight.
That's going to bring us to item 7A, investment grade audit with Train.
I think the agenda was modified. Isn't it public comment now?
Yes. Yeah.
But there's no one here for public comment.
Right.
Sorry.
But they
Yep.
can keep walking.
Yeah, you guys can keep coming.
Okay.
So the investment grade audit tonight, I'm going to have Kevin Ward from Train is going to do a majority of the presentation. If there's questions later, I can step up and help answer those. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin.
Thank you very much.
And we told Kevin that you have a strict 10-minute rule.
He warned me about that. We'll get done well within that. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here tonight and share some information with you that aligns with your strategic goal. I've worked with universities and school districts for 19 years in Kansas, so we're excited to be able to bring this same sort of information to you tonight. I'll let Keaton introduce himself.
Yes, hello. My name is Keaton Christner. I'm a project developer based in Wichita with Train. I've been with Train around 5 years, and I'm also a professional engineer in Kansas, so here to answer any technical questions.
Okay, let's go on to that next slide, Casey. So as I mentioned, this aligns with your strategic plan infrastructure goals and with a host of advantages about putting this into place should the evaluation prove compelling. Continuing that same conversation about your strategic plan, it also helps and aligns with your cost containment initiative, climate survey, and that business department efficiency study by having the elements of what we're going to share in a preliminary assessment form tonight And should you authorize us to do the investment grade audit, then there would be a lot more detail later, okay? So to just kind of unpack this process, so we began and continue to just listen. So we had extensive interviews with Josh and Corey and the team about facilities and the needs there and some of the experiences that the occupants were having. And then we began a very extensive data mining process. We then followed that up with facility surveys, and we actually used a 3D mapping software to map all of your facilities and all of those HVAC assets. So that'll be a tremendous pool of information to help us in facilities and Josh make good decisions, not only initially but downstream as well. Another big piece of data is where do your assets fall in their expected service life. So we're going to share some of that we were able to accumulate. And then we did some preliminary data analysis and some phasing, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the Energy Performance Contracting Statute in Kansas, some of the key milestones that you'll want to consider, and then next step considerations. So Casey? A little bit of an eye chart here, but as you see at the bottom, ASHRAE maintains a national database that informs owners of these types of assets, you know, what the median expected service life is. Now, schools usually get more than service life than a hospital. A hospital would be running 24/7, 365 hard, so but this again is averaged in, okay? So in this color-coded graphic, green is good, red is bad. So we see that the district has been very good stewards of your assets because you've been able to maintain them longer than their expected service life. But again, you reach a certain point where this sort of planning becomes a very important aspect of the planning for the future. We broke it into two parts. The top one is the major equipment, and the second one on the left-hand side there is what's called variable air volume boxes. While it's not major in their individual pieces, a major failure of a major piece could cause a lot of cascading problems, whereas a VAV or a variable air volume box failure would cause just a very limited. But again, we wanted to properly portray those there. And then, of course, on the right-hand side, we did the same thing Keaton did, actually, help you kind of understand, you know, where the red and the green fall on those schools. Next slide. Keaton's going to explain this slide.
Yeah, so part of our process as we're going through the assessment with the district is to see where the buildings lie as far as energy use. So you were able to provide us 3 years of utility data. So one of the energy engineers and I with Train worked on reviewing that, and it shows up in two columns here. So the EUI, just to comment what that is, that's energy use intensity. So that's the amount of energy used per square foot per year. So looking at that 3 years of data in each building, we're able to see kind of how that building stacks up with, again, another ASHRAE standard, which is an industry neutral and widely accepted way to benchmark those buildings. So looking at the two comparisons, it's pretty simple to view here. There's a lot of opportunity for energy savings across the district. So part of our process was reviewing that and also just putting that into our scenario that we'll talk about later with different ideas for ways that the district can save energy at those buildings, as well as looking at equipment replacements that we just looked at as far as on the ASHRAE demonstration. So the expected service life, sorry.
Any questions for him on that?
I wondered on the Riverside and Timmerman, because are those their two buildings with like that geothermal system that's so much better and more efficient?
And I can touch on that. So
okay.
You can see that they're actually lower than, yeah, very good point. They're actually lower than the standard benchmark. So ASHRAE 100, it's actually looking at the type of buildings, so elementary schools in the Midwest, so your actual region, not just across the whole U.S. with, you know, East Coast, North, South. It's looking at just our climate area and those type of buildings to compare. And those two buildings in particular are geothermal, so that's a more energy efficient type of building to begin with, but there still are opportunities for savings at those two buildings, even with them. But on here, it shows that they're typically lower than an average, you know, building of a lower efficient type, but there's still opportunities that we've looked at that are available, so.
That answer your question? Okay, we're ready to move on. So here's more data. So again, Train maintains a database of projects that we do in the Midwest. So we use data that's representative of work in this area, and then we use that database to overlay your needs in your buildings to come up with some planning data. So what we have in that item number 1 is replacing, if you were to, well, for planning purposes only, all of the HVAC equipment in the district that's past its expected ASHRAE service life, and then LEDs and controls optimization, has a budget of around $20.4 million. So for the multi-phased approach that you'll be looking at considering, that's what you're looking at. And then we took the 15 years of savings for estimated energy and operation and maintenance savings, and then deferred maintenance allocation. There are opportunities that we'll be exploring for the Inflation Reduction Act federal incentives that were retained in the 2025 One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and that's what we see at the right-hand side. So we'll be evaluating those. So from number 1, if we then looked at just replacing the highest priority equipment just in educational facilities, then we're looking at that subtotal there. And then if we were to think about maybe a phase 1 of number 2, we broke it down further. So what we're just sharing with you is how we utilize that data to create scenarios that will be part of the detailed study that we'll do during the investment grade audit. Any questions about that process? Okay, we're ready to move on. A little bit about energy performance contracting. So it's an established means of doing these types of projects. You can see Kansas join almost all the rest of the states and the federal government who have statutes that allow for you to leverage these savings as a part of financing these sorts of projects. You see that there's some other advantages where the owner has a lot of control over what goes into those projects and who does that work. So it's again, very beneficial owner-focused type of process. Next slide. On the left-hand side, you see kind of the process. So we've been in the blue boxes. So everything we've done to produce the data today will allow you to make a decision to select us to move on to the investment grade audit. Then we'll go through a detailed technical and financial study and be able to come back with hard savings and hard costs. From that, you'll have options to select what you actually want to do. And then we move forward to installation. You can see that gray box on the far right bottom. There's not only warranty and all those normal things, but this is a performance guaranteed type of project, which is part of that statute. So there will be guaranteed energy savings combined with comfort. So we have to achieve both of those at the same time. We can't achieve one at the expense of the other. Okay, that's where the performance comes in. On the right-hand side, you see how they hold the energy services company solely responsible for all of that work. So that's why we would have a contract directly with the district. We would manage all of the contracts from the subcontractors. All of that work falls, and all the associated risk of construction and the ongoing performance falls on us by statute. Any questions about that? Okay. A little bit of an eye chart here. I tried to color code it. We're at that first green line up there, which is where you're going to consider to authorize us to do that investment grade audit. But we need to get down to those 13, 14 green items in time this fall, so that should you decide to move forward, we'd have enough time to finish the engineering, order the equipment, so it could arrive in time to start work next spring. That's kind of what we're showing right there. Okay, next slide. I'll stand for any questions about anything that we didn't already address. Hearing none, then basically number 2 is your consideration for moving forward.
I do have a question. Where would the people be based out of who would come here to give us service?
Lenexa and Wichita. We have offices in both Lenexa and Wichita.
And what's usually the wait time to get someone here if we have a situation?
Well, we have been on campus at University, at ESU, and I mean, we maintain service people that are there. How long did it take you to get here from Wichita?
Yeah, it's only about an hour from Wichita, so.
And it's about an hour and 10 minutes from our Lenexa office. We also have technicians that are remote that just cover geography. So you're right in our sweet spot. So we have an office in Topeka, an office in Lenexa, and an office in Wichita. Yeah.
I really love the comfort factor that you mentioned. We've heard for so many years about super hot classrooms and super cold classrooms, and how much of that does that affect their testing environment, right? So that's something I think we almost can't really put a price tag on, is getting a regulated HVAC system. I know how happy that makes me at home.
I assume you have, you're dealing with other districts in the state. Do you have any, off the top of your head, do you have any numbers on those or anything?
Yeah, we've done about $300 million worth of these types of projects in Kansas. Some of the districts that you'd recognize would be Shawnee Mission School District. We've done 10 phases with them. We've done Caney Valley School District. We've done several throughout the western part of the state. Like I mentioned, we're finishing up a phase one at the university, about a $13.3 million phase one, and we're already making the steps to move into phase two. We've got a project going on at Washburn University, a $22 million project there. Our first project with them was back in 2013, so we've been on campus that entire time. So yeah, we do a lot of work.
Okay, thanks.
And I want to clarify, just to be sure the board is comfortable, we're not asking you to approve any projects at this time. Right. It's simply to move to the next step. There would be a fee at some point down the road for that work, because it's a lot of work. If we chose to do $6.7 million worth of work, then I think that fee is like $67,000 of the job. It's like a 1% fee.
Yeah.
And so we're not approving projects right now. We're just trying to identify the best way forward. And we've had internal conversations about utilizing some of our bond premium proceeds for this. We do know, in talking to Piper Sandler, that we need to hold back some of those proceeds to pay off debt to manage our mills, so that we don't ever go above what was promised before I got here. But all of you were here, and you want to be sure. We all want to make sure we meet those promises with regard to max mill rates to pay back that 2019 issue. So all this will be wrapped in. Potentially get to the point where you're paying for some of it with some of those bond premium proceeds, and then looking at financing a portion of it that makes sense in order to pay back over a period of time with the savings that you're seeing.
This is so fascinating. I love it. And I'm looking at slide 3, and where they've mapped out each of our buildings, and red. There's a lot of red, and that's really concerning. So to me, I look at this proposal and think, wow, we're going to have to do a lot of work soon, and so we may as well think about how can we do it the best way for our buildings and for our facilities, because
Not piecemealing, which is what it's been for so many years. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited by this.
Okay. Thank you for such a great, thorough presentation. I move to approve selecting Train US, Inc. as the district's energy services company in alignment with KSA 75-37,125, and authorize a project development agreement for the investment grade audit utilizing the TIPS cooperative purchasing system as submitted.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. That's going to bring us to item 7B, renewal of district property casualty and workers' compensation insurance for 2026-2027.
Yes, so this evening we have the recommendation for property casualty workman's comp, it's all in one bundled action item. Workman's comp did drop. If you look at those rates, the change from last year to this year looks promising, but just be aware that will not stay that way. So we're anticipating a climb next year, so just heads up on that. Property casualty went up 8%, which is probably fairly standard for an increase with property casualty. I really don't have anything else except questions. You might have.
My only question is on the property and casualty, is that a replacement cost?
Ooh.
Because here's why I ask. I was just listening to KPR's coverage of the 60th anniversary of the Topeka tornado.
Okay.
And it wiped out almost the entire Washburn University campus. And their board had just voted in the April meeting to do replacement coverage for their buildings. Otherwise, they would have not been able to rebuild at all. Their university would have been just wiped out. It would not have ever existed any longer. So that really got me thinking about our property and casualty insurance. And I didn't know if it was replacement or cost, right? Aren't those options
Or current
at
value,
cost
maybe?
or?
Current value?
Yeah,
Could be replacement cost or current value
Yeah.
possibly. I would need to double check before I
Okay.
said anything out
Well,
loud for
I mean,
sure,
I'm not
but I
saying we
will.
should postpone, but I'd sure like to know for future.
Yes. Can do that.
We can follow up in a Friday note or something to follow up on. I believe it's replacement costs, but we want to verify it.
I move to approve workers' compensation insurance through KASB Workers' Compensation Pool and property and liability insurance through the Kansas Insurance Cooperative for Schools for the 2026-2027 school year as submitted.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
That's going to bring us to item 8A, board reports. We have the FHTC Board of Trustees.
We had our meeting on Monday, finally passed our budget for the upcoming school year, got that in balance after that significant loss I've mentioned to you guys several times with the loss of the Excel and CTE funding from the state. Also bid farewell to former school board member Mike Crouch. It was his last meeting as the director of the foundation at the Tech College. But overall, a nice meeting.
The Rec Commission met, I want to say it was May 18th. And not a whole lot to update, but we did purchase a new vehicle, which was, I'm sure, something that the staff is going to appreciate. We signed a new Jones Aquatic Center agreement, and I believe we extended the days that the Jones Aquatic Center will be open. That way we're not having this situation where it's actually good summer weather to be in the pool, but the pool isn't open. And then we did reaffirm a vote to to send all of the tax credit money the Rec Commission had received that we've been trying to kind of unwind that mess from. So we sent that back to the IRS along with a letter that kind of explained the basis of everything that had happened. And then, of course, we get to wait for the IRS to talk to us. So who knows when that will be. But not much else there. And then I think the steering committee did meet recently, and I believe the ballot question for the sales tax question to renovate and build a new facility. Renovate the old facility, Lee Barron Recreation Center, and then build a new facility is going to be heard on the November ballot. So the November general election, that'll be on the ballot. So I'm sure we're going to hear more about that soon.
Okay, thank you very much. That brings us to 9A, Superintendent Report.
Yeah, thank you, Art. Just a few things. Put a note in there about food service costs of goods continuing to rise. You approved several line item bids for fruits and vegetables and various things that to get through another school year in food service. And I think it's just important to note and for everyone to realize that there are a lot of things that are out of our control that cause our costs to go up. And while we're working really, really hard over the course of the last 9 months to find ways to reduce areas of our budget that we do have control over. At the same time, working against us are a variety of inflationary type items. Just in food service alone, you know, in fresh produce and other food products, there's a $200,000 increase. So there goes $200,000 of that cost containment that we worked on, you know, right back in as an expense that's out of our control. So just wanted to point that out. It's not, food isn't the only thing going up, and it won't be the only place that occurs. A little bit of information there about district enrollment. It's important to get all of our families enrolled as early as possible. We have online enrollment for returning students open on July 15th through the Power School Parent Portal, and we ask the families to complete all those required enrollment forms by July 30th so that we can ensure that we're ready for them at the start of the school year. We will have bilingual enrollment staff available at Jones Early Childhood Center again this year from July 20th to 23rd, and then again July 27th to the 30th to assist any families that might need support with the enrollment process. And we just, again, encourage families to complete it as early as possible so that we can plan appropriately. You know, as we went through cost containment, we said we're going to be sure that we're not overstaffed to start the year. So in order for us to try to get it just right, that means we have to know how many students we're going to have, where they're going to be, what grade level, and so on, because we do have some teachers even that are being hired at this point that aren't being given a specific grade level, or others that maybe think there's an opportunity that they may end up moving from one school to another. So the earlier we can get families enrolled, the faster we can kind of put everyone at ease, because it's no fun waiting to find out where your assignment's going to be, right? I just wanted to mention the Flint Hills Digital Campus conversation just from a school district's perspective. I want to point out that I'm not sitting here making any comments for or against the project. I just think that it was important for us to provide some factual information as it pertains to the district on how any project of this magnitude would impact the district or would not impact the district, because I think some believe that, you know, big projects like this will just solve all of our problems, when actually statutes kind of limit our ability to collect local option budget for operation purposes, and so it really doesn't do some of the things that people think it would. So just to point out a few things, the whole project is within our boundaries. At build out, you know, what we're hearing touted is that it would triple the assessed value of the county, so we'll assume that would triple the assessed value of the school district, for that matter. Currently, 1 mil in our school district produces $297,000, so you could see where 1 mil per se in capital projects that was producing $297 would produce potentially 3 times that for any project that would be of this size. So really, if you think about it, don't even think about it as a data center, but just think about it as any project that might potentially triple the value of assessed valuation. This is the kind of impact it would have. This particular project isn't really set to start to go up vertically for probably, I mean, if all things went perfect, another 3 years. Of course, work would start before that, but anything going up vertically, and probably 10 years for a full build out is what we're hearing on this project. It's highly likely the project would be in a tax abatement program. That means that our entire local option budget, taxes that would be received during the period of abatement, would go toward assisting in development of the project, not go to the school district. So you can imagine it would be more than a decade down the road before the district would have any kind of an impact in its operating side, LOB wise, even in lowering the levy. Kind of reference this, our local option budget is capped at 33% of its annual state aid, and so, for example, we know we're losing state aid next year, and so we will also lose local option budget money as well, because we can only collect up to 33% of whatever we collect. So it really doesn't matter how much the value is locally. It doesn't increase what you can collect in your local option budget. What it would do is lower the mills that it would require to collect that amount that's calculated. Where the district would see the biggest impact in a project like this is capital outlay funding, for one. For example, the 8 mills in capital outlay now produces about $2.4 million. If you use the tripling effect of that, that means a mill would our 8 mills would produce $7.2 million annually. So it'd be great to have that money right now to put toward this, all these HVAC projects that we have, rather than having to borrow some of it down the road. Additionally, a large increase could also shorten the time to pay off bond and debt, because they can't abate the bond and interest levy, and so any kind of bond debt that we would have could potentially be paid back either at a lower mill rate or faster to get it off the tax levy completely. So the project doesn't immediately change any kind of the trajectory for us as far as student enrollment decline. This isn't going to produce a bunch of students all of a sudden. It's going to be a while before you start to see jobs. And so I think I just wanted to clarify what it would do, what it wouldn't do, and that the difficult decisions that we've had to make up to this point aren't resolved by a project like this. And will continue to be difficult decisions to be made over the course of the next 2 or 3 years till we kind of dig ourselves out of our financial hole and get to a point where we feel like we're positioned to begin to progress. And a lot of that will have to do with, what does our enrollment do moving forward, and we don't know what that looks like today. That's primarily just what I wanted to say about that. I know I'm not standing here saying it's a good for us or bad for us. Just here's what it is and isn't.
Okay, thank you. That's going to move us to item 10A, executive session negotiations.
I move we enter executive session for 15 minutes to discuss negotiation information pursuant to the exception for employer-employee negotiations under the Kansas Open Meetings Act, and that we return to open session in this room at 7:22 p.m. Superintendent Dr. David McGeehee, Assistant Superintendent of Business Operations Josh Swartz, and Director of Human Resources Erica Mickelson are invited to join the board for this session. No action is anticipated.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
I motion to return to regular session.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to return to regular session. Please cast your vote.
Maybe she's taking a nap. Nope, she's awake. Motion passes 7-0.
I move we go into executive session. Sorry, I'm not on the right one. It's probably the same though. I move we go into executive session for 17 minutes to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel in order to protect the privacy interest of the individuals to be discussed, and to return to this room at 7:42 p.m. Superintendent Dr. David McGeehee, Director of Human Resources Dr. Erica Mickelson, and Assistant Superintendent of Business Operations Mr. Josh Swartz are invited to join the session. Action is anticipated.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
It says is.
So sorry. It should be a no.
I wondered. Okay. Action is not anticipated.
I will second that also.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
I motion to return to regular session.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. That brings us to future board calendar dates. Next week on Monday, June 15th, and Tuesday, June 16th, we will be having our board retreat at the Flint Hills Technical College, which is all day, both of those days. And then our July meeting will be on July 8th. It's only one meeting the month of July, so that will be, again, at 6 p.m. at Mary Herbert Education Center. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Sorry.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Casey.
Thank you.